So they want to talk about social media and the pitfalls of social media, because it's the modern ailment, the modern virus, or the modern fabulousness, really, which, depending on your perspective, on a daily or momentary basis, depending what sort of reaction you're getting to your post. We love it, we hate it, depending how beneficial it is to us, generally speaking, or in the moment. So they want to refer back to the tonal and the nagual video, which is a really important sort of precursor to this, because the tonal and the nagual, they for the first time, the spirits want to talk about these two major places as them being two very different dimensions. So the tonal is very much the social world, and also our interpretation and perception and our energy interacting with the social world. And our nagual is very much our deep core self, our soul, our spirit. If you can imagine, so they're saying that really we have these layers of dimension within our energy, because we're energy first. Please watch the video on the human box. We're energy first before we go into the human box. So as energy, we have levels of dimensions within our energy egg. If we imagine ourselves as an energy egg, it's quite a good visual. We could see that as dimensions, and the closer we get to the outer part of the egg is more towards the tonal, the logic, the brain. It's the tonal area, the social area. It's like a skin area. And so if we were to drop a big rock, skim a stone and drop it down, 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 it drops down through these dimensions of the tonal to the deeper, 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 and it'll go into a very deep part, and that core of ourself, a bit like the core of the earth or the core of the sun, that is our nagual area, the deep true, you could say the true self of ourself. Now, there's a great sense of coming home and a great sense of belonging when we come down into our true self, because there are no levels of performance there, or pleasing, or in a sense the social realm that we all, the do's and don'ts, the rights, the wrongs, the do this, the do that, the don't sit there, our social norms of behaviour in a sense cease to exist the further we drop into our deep core dimensional nagual centre. And so, of course, social media, you imagine those, those static balls that they sell, where you touch it and the electricity goes and flicks up to the surface, this sort of static, and it picks up the energy. The energy sits in the core, and then when something goes towards the external of the globe, the static energy sort of flicks up and touches the edge, touches the dome, the surface of the dome. So that's quite a good visual picture to give ourselves. So we imagine our energy at the core of our nagual, particularly in our dream world. In our subconscious, this is all this realm that they talked about. So it seems a long way from social media at the moment, but bear with us, because it's the starting point that's correct. We need to get the correct starting point as to why it benefits us or doesn't benefit us. So there's our globe, our static energy sits in the core. Now when we move into the social realm, we move into the periphery. We come up from our dimension and we go into a different, the tonal world, the social world is a different dimension. It's a very different, and we feel it. If we're sitting alone with a candle, listening to some music, we feel that dimension shift. We feel it. We feel completely different. We feel expanded. We feel more. We feel bigger. We feel maybe powerful. We feel We might feel disturbed if we've got bubbles of unresolved issues that are bubbling around our core, our nagwal, our deep layers that we haven't resolved, which obviously we need to resolve. Please see the video on Heal the Wounds. Bubbles exist like that. When you look at seaweed and it moves, and there's oxygen being created all the time by the plants and the animals in the sea, and the bubbles coming up all of the time. In a sense, we could, as a visual, we could picture unresolved issues as the air that's come into the water. The tonal, let's see the tonal as the air around, and the very watery nagwal, that deep zone, that deep dimensional place is a very watery place, but it can have bubbles in it. Bubbles of delusion, bubbles of bigotry, bubbles of ignorance, bubbles that are not really, that come from issues, traumas, experiences we've had that have kind of misaligned us, which means we've got these sort of bubbles that kind of shouldn't really be in there. So although we may really want to go to this great deep place of ourself and this place of belonging, if that place is also filled with lots of traumas that are unresolved, we may find that we just avoid going there. It's kind of like always avoiding going swimming, always avoiding getting wet. It's that sense of always avoiding going to that realm if it's too frightening and we haven't dealt with anything yet, But we're still going to be drawn to it because, of course, it's like our true house. If you can imagine that room in your house, that's the place, the sofa, the fire, the candles, the music, the place where you deeply, deeply relax, where you feel like really, that's the dimension of the inner core. We may not allow ourselves to go there very often, or maybe at all. In which case, we may end up living very close to the surface, which is in the tonal realm. So the problem is, getting there now, bear with us. The problem is that the social realm is exactly, well, it's not that social, is it really? We're not really being with people, because actually, in the sense, we're engaging more with our deeper self if we're actually in the social. What we're doing is actually almost going in the visual social. So it doesn't have the full experience of being with a person. That's the first thing. So it doesn't allow us to move between dimensions like you may with a real person. Actually, what it's engaging most of all is the shallower visual elements. That person looks like they feel well, unhappy, miserable, thrilled, exhilarated. So this social media in particular is coming from a more visual perspective. Visually, it's an engagement that's very visual, which is always on the uppermost realm of the tonal. The problem is with that is that to sustain being there or remain there all of the time is actually rather an unhappy place to be. So people talk about mental health, and that mental health has been affected. There's trolls, obviously, there's a lot of negative, a lot of positive, a lot of negative on social media, of course. The problem is in being there for long periods, because that's not where we truly live, in a sense. The core of our dimension is the deep place. That's why we do meditation and wellness, and people are more into this wave of this on and off, and it's coming back again in the modern world. People are more into introspection, but within a flit of a second, that introspection is gone if we've picked our phone up within a millisecond and looked for a like or a dislike or reaction or an email. We've gone instantly from that deep core place, different dimension. We've flipped within a millisecond to the tonal dimension, which is a social, visual, social dimension, which is only satisfying if people are very stimulating, probably saying really nice things, giving us dopamine, because we are the furthest distance, almost in dimensional kilometres, from the core of ourself. So we have to only have nice, good, happier, nice things said about us, likes, whatever, or we're very vulnerable. We're vulnerable, why? Because we're so far distant from our core, where our true belonging is. So in a sense, we've tripped ourselves up. We've got one arm and one leg behind our back, and then we're dependent on nice things. It's like we're overly dependent on the nice things because we are not creating anything from our core. You know, if we go back to creating, which is where joy and our true happiness can come from creating, from ourselves, really creating something ourselves, that's a different dimensional thing. You know, response, creation, response, creating, they're very different dimensions to be in. And so if we're let's say we created something, we put it out there, and that's it, we stop creating, we're just out there. We're then tied with an arm and a leg until we go back to creating where the joy is again. We're genuinely not going to create the true joy. You know, it has a limited run, if you like. Even the nice comments, let's say we get lots of thousands of nice comments and keeps going on and on and on and on. It's wonderful. We start getting tired of it. So we then need 10,000 nice comments for it to hit the spot, because it's not hitting the spot anymore, even for us. So the first one was fabulous. Everything after that is a bit low-key, a bit, but you've got so many wonderful comments. People have said lovely things about you, etc., etc. Yeah, but because it's not a sustainable place for us to be. It's not a place where we live and breathe. It's not a place where our energy lives and breathes. Our energy lives and breathes in the dimension of creating things, of creating things from the ground up, if you like, the new creation. That kind of, and when we create, in a sense, we drop everything. We drop everyone, drop everything. We go to this dimension that is very, very deep. Like when that stone has been dropped down into the deepest part that it goes to. And that, it can be a very lonely place, there's no doubt about that. And if we have bubbles, if we have mixed up bubbles in there of traumas to do with being lonely or abandoned or whatever, those are maybe big issues for us that we must resolve so that we can go to this wonderful place. But it's a truly beautiful, sacred place, the depths of our soul. It's a sacred place, but it is a place where you kind of go solo. You go there solo, even with working with a team of people. You know, in terms of you can be with people, and yet, because it's a dimensional shift, it depends where you are in your dimension. Someone might say to you, Sarah, and you're doing your creation. Sarah, hey, I was talking to you. And you may not have, if you've gone into a deep dimension, you may not have even heard them, you know, because you've gone into a different dimension. You've gone into that deep dimension. And other people envy people who can go into that creative dimension. But we all have the ability to go there. It's access all areas. It belongs to all of us. But if we've got a lot of pain that's been absorbed by the female part, because the female tends to be the great absorber, as well as the joy and the creator, and the male part will tend to be the strength part, the logic part, and do things outwards. The female is introspective. So if there are a lot of these bubbles that are kind of bubbles of air that shouldn't be in the soul, if you like, of unresolved traumas, bits that are not meant to be in there, once we work on that trauma and clean it up and we see where the true feeling was and the true value lay, that energy, that bubble moves away and dissolves, and that energy is restored, and that soul part is restored again to a greater energy, to a natural self. The natural soul energy comes back again. So we may be very disinclined, depending on how much trauma we've got, to even go there. But then, of course, we're cutting our nose off to spite our face because we can't get to this place of belonging. It's this wonderful, it's this wonderful, comfortable, relaxing sofa, really, where we are. What's so wonderful about it is that we are truly ourself. There's no performance, there's no pleasing, there's no performance in any sense. We are the core of our true self. And we feel it as love, to go there and be ourselves. It feels so wonderful because to go there, the act of going there is to love ourselves. Because we're no longer performing for something, someone, something, social, whatever. We're not performing. We are being, doing ourself. And that's an act of love, which is why it feels so wonderful. But then, so we've got this opposite thing going on with social media, We've got this opposite dimensions going on, which, yes, we're going to feel, if we remain in that very high up tonal area of this social realm all the time, it's like a sense. It's like the opposite. Everything's a parallel in the material world, because it's like we can only breathe when we go underwater. So it's actually, when we're in the air, it's actually in reverse. Being in the tonal social, we might feel like we just can't breathe because we've put so many constraints on our behaviour. The more social, in a sense, the more we're trying to fit in, in this realm, fitting in, doing this, doing that, taking that shape, taking that shape, taking that shape. And before we know it, we're so twisted up from our actual true shape. We feel like we can't breathe. So yes, mental health is going to plummet because we're not being with ourselves. We're not being ourselves. We're twisting ourselves into lots of different human shapes in order to perform. It can be very, very subtle. It can be very subtle, or it can be that we really play a role that we just hate. And it's so far removed from love to be this person. That's why we hate it, because it's not who we are. There's that song, I Am What I Am. And there's so much strength and power in that as well, in being ourselves. For ourselves. It doesn't need to be a public display, but mostly the starting point is for ourselves. So this social media can really, if we remain in it and don't know how to, if we, I suppose, get addicted to those dopamine hits, really. It's a realm we find so stimulating and so engaging, and so, we may get positive. We're going to want to stay there. But this is a fantastic dark spirit game. Please see the videos on dark spirits, because you're guaranteed to lose your value by being there all the time, because you're waiting. I'll say this, I'll make that comment, I'll say that. It's very subtle performance layers, very subtle, but it's maybe about, getting attention, being significant. If it's in that social realm like that of requiring response, we are not, and it might be right for us to be there for certain periods of time, or right for us to be there quite a bit, but if we're there all the time, it's a place, you're so far removed from your true self, of just being your true self. And that's where self-love is. That it can only result in, long term, it can only result in massive amounts of value leaks. Our energy is diamonds, as talked about in the energy vase. Our energy is the equivalent. Our awareness energy has the value of diamonds. And so if we are there remaining in the tonal world, the social world, in our consciousness, remaining in that tonal world all the time, we are constantly at the mercy of people's approval and disapproval. And we are remaining in that realm. So therefore we are just slightly, very, very slightly, or maybe more extremely, adjusting our behaviours all the time. Like this sort of balancing scale that's constantly on the tilt. You know, being this, being that, being that, being that, being this way, whoop, whoop, bit more down, that, up, that. We're constantly on the move like that, changing, being something we're not. And that is a massive, going back to the diamonds, this is what's so important. That's a massive leak of value to not be who we are. It's a massive act of unlove. And so you're going to be leaking. You know, we don't need to be shouting our true self with a trumpet. You know, it's foremost and first of all being with ourselves, taking time with ourselves. So, you know, it might be that we find that meditation allows us to come back into that deep Nagwal self. And we're going to feel wonderful. And then we don't know why. Well, we just lost that wonderful feeling, you know. Where's it gone? How do I find it again? It's just, well, you know. And then we may be tempted to drink and drugs, you see, because they might put our brain into that zone, if you like, a pseudo zone of feeling that way, that sort of nebulous, in that nebulous cloud of soul, at a price. But we can go there freely without the drugs and the alcohol. But, you know, if we've instantaneously checked a message just afterwards, bam, that's been the shift. Did you choose to go back to the tonal, or did you just check your email? You know, make sure you're ready to choose to go back to the tonal world before you do it. You know, otherwise it's a knee-jerk. Check the email, gone. You have gone at that point. Because you are checking approval, disapproval, approval, disapproval. You're going into that social realm. You know, the social realm where we adjust ourselves, you know, which we all do to a greater or less extent, adjust ourselves to fit in to the community, if you like. Maybe to lead the community, you know, to be a voice in the community. But there's that adjustment, the moving away from the true self. The true self, we might think, maybe it's far too boring. The true self is the true self of energy. It's sacred. It's diamond, you know. It doesn't matter what other people are thinking, you know. It's irrelevant. You can't be in two places at once. That's the thing. So the moment you check your email, you have gone. Because you cannot be in two dimensions at once. At least if we could choose our dimension in terms of our mental health and our health generally, wouldn't that be wonderful? You know, isn't that a better system? Okay, I've done my soul time. I feel satiated. I'm happy to go to the social where I kind of, you know, have to think about the ways that I say this or the, you know, there are always social, even just social norms, if you like. The human box, you know, the human box. We are energy and we are pushing ourselves into a human box. There's going to be some corners that get sort of chopped off with that. in order to fit into the shape of the human box. Yeah. So social media.